Hey guys, I'm Si and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. This is series number 2 of our revamped and new look mental health and sports show. This time around, the series is focusing specifically on footballers and football, people within the game of football. We'll be talking to current and ex-footballers generally about their difficulties or their relationship with mental health, addiction, or similar subjects. In the current climate, obviously this is talking about mental health issues is more important than ever before, in my opinion. It's a very strange and difficult time. And these shows are just an honest and open account discussion, some of the issues which might have been faced by the athletes or the current goings on in the world, or even at the height of their career. It's basically their story, with myself and Jacob asking some questions along the way. Here at Ace Podcast Nation, we've got a whole variety of great shows and series featuring expert analysts, exclusive interviews, and more. So subscribe to youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation for the video versions, or you can get the audio versions at all the usual podcast and radio platforms. With no further ado, joining me for each episode of this series is my good friend now. He's a mental health support worker, Mr. Jacob.
Best friends,
Jacob.
mate.
Best friends, Jacob. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm all right. It seems like ages since we did our last one. In those times, COVID's kicked off proper, hasn't it?
Yeah, every time I think it's gone, it comes back.
It comes back. This time it's back for a second go. But I did probably, my daughter was in isolation because her teacher had COVID. And 3.5-year-old in isolation who's
nasty.
Most people, that if they've listened to the podcast, they know I've got ADHD, and we're always suspecting if my daughter's got it. We definitely had an intense test if she had it or not in those 2 weeks. I was ready to break the law near the end. I was pulling my hair out, and there's not much of that either. So, but yeah, it's great to be back at it. And I suppose since we did our last one, there's been a lot more talk about mental health, but also
100%.
I know you a couple of weeks ago were talking about the player who commits suicide for Man City. So I think it's more in people's sort of radars now, and I think this podcast is more relevant than it's ever been.
Yeah, 100%, mate. It's such a difficult time. Like, I'm lucky. My kids now, all 3 kids. My youngest is 11, so like being stuck in the house is not as bad for them. Whilst they'd rather be able to go and see their friends and stuff, they're also quite happy to play on the Xbox and go on their tablets and whatever. So it's a bit easier. But I look back thinking when they were like babies and toddlers all together, I think, oh my God, don't know if I'd be able to cope with that. But today's guest is former West Ham, Stoke City, and of course Manchester United winger, among other clubs, is Mr. Luke Chadwick. Welcome back to the channel, Luke.
Thanks very much. Nice to be back and speaking to you two guys.
Top man. Yeah, I've been looking forward to having a chat again. Obviously, we had you on the Andy Campbell football show on a Monday a few weeks back on the live show. I think like the main difference with this is obviously in that show we focused on your kind of on-field career, whereas today we're talking more sort of off the field and things like that. And kind of just before we go into your story and a bit about you and stuff like that, I did want to make mention of young Jeremy Whitson again. He's, of course, a Manchester City academy graduate who had been released by Manchester City, and he unfortunately and sadly committed suicide at such a young age. And I think, obviously, on the Andy Campbell show, we did pay tribute to him, and we did talk to him, talk about the situation. It's an incredibly sad situation, but also it's difficult to not feel like it's avoidable. But obviously, without knowing the every in and out of his situation and story is difficult. But Jacob, what was your initial reaction when you saw that and you kind of read the general story?
I remember, I posted something. I read the story and I posted it, and I in my comment I said, really sad thinking about his family, but unfortunately this is going to continue to happen unless changes are made. It's one of those things the clubs haven't learned, and we're not even just talking big clubs, small clubs. The way if you're going to tell an 8-year-old or 7-year-old from, keep doing this and pressure from at that age to then get to 16, and their whole sort of life has been playing for a club, and some clubs are great. I'm sure there's some clubs when they drop players, they do it really well. I don't know any club. I'm not aware of any club that offer sort of that say, look, if you are struggling, this is who you go to.
Like some aftercare or something.
Yeah, there might be. I doubt it, but I'm sure there must be one. But I hear of loads of clubs that just go, sorry, you're not good enough, go. And it's like anything. If you're getting sacked, but imagine working somewhere from the age of 8. Imagine having an employer from the age of 8 that is your dream job, and then at 16 being just sacked like that. But also like at that age, I think of what I was like at 16, sort of 17, even 18, was so naive and sort of like so impressionable. When if someone I really respected was just basically ended things in a bad way, it's really difficult.
You find it difficult to deal with and process, don't you?
Yeah, and the most annoying thing is it's not, so clubs can go, this costs money and all that. It doesn't cost any money to go, really sorry for your lot, sorry that it didn't work out, but if you are struggling, here's some information. Yeah, it takes 2 seconds to make a leaflet that says, need support, go to Mind, speak to your GP. You could just print something off Mind website and hand that out. I don't know any clubs that do that. And I'd love if someone's listening and it's different at their club, let us know. But all the clubs I've spoke to, they don't do it. So that's the only for me. I feel for his family and his friends, because we don't know the ins and outs, but there must be a club like Man City. They've got no excuses. There's no excuses why this happens.
There's no sort of aftercare, isn't it? You'd think that there would be some sort of process in place, maybe, whereby, because the thing which gets me, or I think about a lot, is obviously I got a couple of boys in sort of academy systems, and they very much are told all the way through that this is what you're aiming for. You're aiming for that first team, and you're aiming for to get a contract when you're 16, 17. That's what you're aiming. And they build you up and build you up and build you up. And I've seen boys dropped in the most brutal of fashion. One boy I know from a club around by me, used to be in the Premier League, got dropped by text after being at the football club since he was 6 years old. And he was never given any kind of explanation or reason. And I'm not saying that kids need to have like a big long explanation about this, that, and the other, but it's a big thing for them to process, and to just kind of get it bluntly as a text, I think, is a bit brutal. Luke, you've got a bit of a unique kind of insight into this. Obviously, you work with kids football, and also obviously you've been a professional footballer at the top level. What could clubs and football as a whole do better to try and avoid this happening, or this sort of thing happening again?
Yeah, it's so hard. Obviously, the whole story that came out is shocking. It's an absolute tragedy. I've been involved in academy football and been the person releasing kids, and it was obviously an awful thing for me to do, but more importantly, how I'm affecting their lives. Obviously, I tried to do it in the best caring way possible, but looking back on my time, I certainly didn't do enough in terms of aftercare. And at the same time, once you're the club that has released a young kid from the academy or whatever it may be, that more or less all the time the parents, the child, are not really interested in your help, because you're the one that's just let go their child, who's obviously, and rightly so, is the most important thing to them, and you've just upset them by releasing them. It's the reason that I got out of professional football, really, because I couldn't bring myself to do it, to shatter young kids' dreams, and not knowing how to do that in the most effective way, really. It was more certainly needs to be done. I was part of a group of people that went to the PFA to sort of offer a program in terms of piloting a scheme with a club where it's outsourced, because I think people won't accept, or the majority of people won't accept help from the team that's just released them, because that's the nature of life. You've just upset them and they don't really want your help. I think if it was outsourced and someone separate was coming in to speak to the kids over a 3, 6, 9, 12-month period where you're sort of giving them positive messages and they're trying to help the kids and point them in the right direction of getting help. I think it's the club's responsibility in terms of getting the kids trials or going to other clubs if that's what they want to carry on doing. But that sort of mental side of it needs to come from another source and not the football club, in my opinion, to make it more effective, make it more of a program that could be rolled out amongst the football clubs. I mean, like even Man City's, Chelsea's, obviously incredible football clubs who are financed so much. I think even at them clubs, the children and the parents of the children wouldn't be too receptive of receiving help from them.
No. So this kind of falls into a question that we got sent in. John Wish sent in a question and he said, sorry for the bad example, but, and he said the WWE, which is the World Wrestling Federation, basically, for lack of a better term, they have a scheme whereby if you have ever worked for them, whether as a wrestler or a referee or even in the offices at any point, and you run into mental health, addiction issues, anything like that, if you've worked for them a day in your life, they will pay for your treatment. And what John says is basically he's asking, should football clubs or could football clubs implement something like that? And I think, just for me personally, I think it's a fantastic idea. But like for, I don't know, I'll pluck a club out of the blue, say, we'll use Walsall as a example, as we had the captain on, James Clark. I don't think Walsall have the finances to be able to help every single person who's ever worked for, every player who's ever played for them who may have mental health or addiction issues, like as the years go on. They just haven't got the finances. But it would be nice if the PFA and the football clubs and the Premier League or the FA, they could all kind of get together and maybe work out some similar kind of...
I suppose that is the role of the PFA, though, isn't it? Well, I know. I don't know how, like, if there's, if you've been at the game for a certain, but I know it should be if you've played at a professional level for. I don't know what the offcut is or how it works.
I think where the gaping hole is in the schoolboy ages, where they don't fall under a governing body, as it were. They're all underneath the teams. I think there is support offered through the PFA and LFE from once you turn into a full-time footballer at the age of 16. They do a lot of good work, but I think the problem is that you sort of have to go and seek that help. And when you're struggling, a lot of the time, it's not something that you do, is it? You don't go and seek help for how down you're feeling or whatever. So there's no provision. I don't think in them under 9s to under 16 academy players, there is slightly more 16 to 18 and obviously the rest of your career. But again, it's around someone being proactive and seeking that help when you're feeling your mental health isn't great. Proactive's not something that you are, and you're not going to go and seek the help that is out there.
No, and I think I can't remember who it was. Someone else mentioned a similar thing on a recent show whereby, because like you say, because the kids are not professional, they don't fall under that umbrella. So there is this big hole. But then for me, another aspect to that gaping hole is a lot of the academies, or particularly the development centres who were kind of part of the academy or a feeder system for the academies, they aren't always run by the football clubs. They're run by the foundations, which obviously use the football clubs' names, but are not always directly affiliated with the football clubs. And I think that creates, or maybe it makes that hole bigger, because then you've got all these lads, particularly as they get into those kind of formative teenage years, that's where there's more issues with kind of mental health and things like that. But then, Jacob, I think a big thing is also making sure that they're doing as well as they can in school, outside of football, so that if they do get that bad news whereby they're told they're not going to get a professional contract, they don't feel like their whole world has just ended because they failed all their GCSEs because they've put everything into football. It's tricky. Clubs can help with that, I think.
I've done mental health education for a club. Did it for free. I was happy to do it in my sort of role in the NHS. Did, I think, 2 or 3 classes, and I was like, look, happy to do more. And then didn't really hear back. And I was like, look, not that I want to feel wanted, but if I'm doing something for you for free, you sort of expect not a thank you, but just like if you want it more, they could have. If they would have emailed me to say, "Look, loved it, can you come back?" I would have done it, and that's the thing that I struggle with. I think if you've got
down to football clubs not being proactive enough?
Yeah, I think that's what
maybe not taking mental health so serious enough.
I would love to say, maybe I was rubbish at my job, but I know they like what we delivered was a great package. And since then, I spoke to a few of the families, and I spoke to the families because I was like, we've been told, like I was told for years, don't even approach the club because they don't need it, they don't want it. Spoke to loads of families, and it only came about because I went to the club and said, look, I spoke to 5 or 6 families, they would love this, I'm happy to offer it for free. And they're like, oh yeah, we've been wanting this for years, and then unfortunately nothing really happened from it. And I think that's the problem. There's some amazing charities out there, amazing people that are happy to give their time for free to help people. But either the clubs, there's just something there, I don't know what it is, that they're reluctant to take that leap. In my role, if someone was saying, look, I'll come to your work and offer you some free training, or the same with Luke. I imagine if someone said to your business now, look, we're going to come and do a free session on mental health education for your coaches, you'd be like, fantastic, brilliant. Because corporate businesses are paying like thousands of pounds for this. So if someone's offering it for free, you bite their hand off. In most other businesses, in small football projects, in grassroots stuff, all these small football projects, girls footballs, boys footballs, they would bite their hand off for someone to speak to their players about mental health. So when it's happening in the clubs and the clubs are like, nah, we don't want it. That's for me. I just don't get it. I find it frustrating.
Yeah, there's a big disconnect there, isn't there? Between, it certainly feels like there's a disconnect between the outward message regarding mental health from whether it be the FA, football clubs. Like publicly, it's very much, mental health is important. Mental health is something that we need to raise awareness, we need to talk about. But then when it comes to doing, I don't feel like everyone's pulling in the same direction.
I think that's where
I think that's a problem.
Football is head over heels. Like, not all of it, but I think community football where like it's youth football teams or like things like Luke's running, are head and shoulders above the pro game. We're talking about mental health, and especially with the youth level of like, and how we look after even if it's just the language we look after our well-being. How do we look after our well-being before a game? And I was told, parents. Luke might be able to tell me this, but I was told by one club, the parents don't care. The parents just want their son to make it. They don't care about. And I said, look, me personally as a parent, I want my child, if the choice is out of team A or team B, they're both the same sort of level, but one is offering more support around sort of what happens if the player is released. As a parent, I'm more likely to choose that. But I was told 100%. No. I was told, nah, the parents don't care about that. They only care about, which is the highest level, which I get, if one's, Premier League and one's League One, maybe, but if they're at the same sort of level, I don't know if I buy that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, go on, Luke, go on.
I think football clubs that tend to be a bit closed off, and I think the perception is that they are doing enough in terms of the mental health side of it and everything with workshops and whatever. But in reality, obviously, the story that came out last week, loads more needs to be done because there's thousands and thousands of kids that are getting released from football clubs every season, and it is going to affect you in a negative way, and more needs to be done to support that. I think what I found in academy football, not with everyone, there's some fantastic people there, but a lot of the kids are there just to become a professional footballer, and they come into the system way too early, and they're training 3 times a week from the age of 9, and it sort of takes over their whole life, and it's just, it doesn't sit right with me, the amount that they do at such young ages, and then get
too young.
Yeah, when they could be. I mean, I remember the fondest memories of my childhood was playing with my mates in the local grassroots team. It was the best times of your life, and I think we take that away from them a little bit by getting them into academies at such a young age.
The academies, they once you get to high school, and I only kind of know this from personal experience, was once you get to high school, so sort of year 7, year 8, they actually stop you playing in a lot of cases for your grassroots side. So, for instance, for my oldest son, he's a goalkeeper. So they would let him play for his grassroots team, but only after I sort of said, well, he's not first choice goalkeeper. So he's traveling to all the games, he's doing all the training, but quite often he'll be sat on the bench. So he's not playing on a Saturday because he's in this academy, but then do you know what I mean? There's a big disjoint there, and it was affecting him. So I think it's about everyone pulling in the same direction at all levels, I guess. So Luke, if I put you on a spot very quickly, just to put you on a spot now, so don't worry too much about it, but I'm just interested in general in the kind of ideas that you would come up with. If I was the head of the FA and I said, right, Luke Chadwick, I want the way we help footballers and the way we deal with mental health in the Premier League and Championship to improve and to get better and to change. What 3 things would you implement, like from day one or early days, to try and get the ball rolling?
I think obviously education's a huge thing from the youngest ages, understanding what the journey is going to look like, and there's 99% chance that this journey is not going to end in you becoming a professional footballer. And the most important part of it is enjoying the journey while you're on it, not sort of just be concentrating on being a footballer at the end of it. It's an incredible opportunity at most academies, and they get loads of fantastic experiences. But if you don't enjoy that experience because all you want to do is become a professional footballer, I think it's sort of, I don't want to say waste of time, but it sort of takes away.
Detrimental, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think in terms of an exit process needs to be sorted out, so you understand that from the second you sign for the club, this is what's going to happen, and there's every chance at some stage this journey is going to come to an end, and this is how we're going to deal with it. And then that is dealt with from people outside the football club, from professional agencies, whoever it is who's got an expertise in dealing with something like being released from a football club. They take over the process from the club, and if the child wants to carry on in his journey in professional football, the club are responsible for sorting out trials and going for other clubs. But all the mental side of it is left to experts in the field.
Yeah, I think that's a great start, and I think that's the sort of basis you want if you want to change the way things are. And I think it's vital that something's done, because I don't want to be reading in a few months' time about another academy player or just another footballer or ex-footballer who's kind of taken their own life because they've struggled with their career ending or being dropped, or whatever it may be. We've got to kind of stop that cycle, which seems to be becoming more regular, for lack of a better term. It's happening more. And I wonder as well, like, obviously we hear about various footballers at various time having issues, whether they're current or ex-footballers, whether it's issues with mental health or addiction or problems, whatever it may be. I wonder about all the ones we're not hearing about because they're not telling people. And I guarantee there's a lot, whether it's ex or current footballers, who are having some sort of battle whether it's mental health or addiction or whatever it may be. And almost they're the ones I worry for even more because they're keeping it to themselves. And I think it's COVID and lockdown and things like this is only going to make it worse. I think, Jacob, I think you agree with that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking, I think you've got to look at the environment with COVID. If you look at low level, League One, League Two, them not getting any ticket, any gate, from the fans is going to have a huge financial effect on them near the end of the season. So where before they maybe took, signed a couple of youth players from their academies, now they're going to be like, is that? And some clubs might go, look, is this financially viable for us to even run an academy?
Yeah.
For some clubs, it's not. I know some fans might go, yeah, but if we've got no money, it's cheaper to get a young player. But if a manager is on a short contract, that manager is not going to go, I'm going to, anyway. He's not going to go, look, I'm going to put my career, my reputation, and my job on signing these two young players. He's just going to go, I'm going to go with what I know. So yeah, that's the problem. I think we're really going to see it. So I know with sort of academy development squads, I think it's the 17s to 18s. They hear about their contracts. There's twice a year, I think it is. So it's December. I know it is locally. So December and then at the end of the season. So, I think by the end of the summer, we're going to either see, hopefully not, but we might see a few more cases, unfortunately.
Yeah, obviously the other aspect of it is Keith Gillespie spoke about his difficulties with gambling in episode 1, and I believe that gambling addiction in young players is over the next 10 to 15 years, I think is going to be even more prevalent than problems with like alcohol and things like this that maybe players in the 70s and 80s and 90s may have had, or some of them have had, coming out of the game. I believe gambling is going to be the biggest problem for the players because, like, if you think of lockdown, how bored these players are going to have been. Gambling is the most accessible and easy thing to do. And if you're a Premier League or even a Championship player, you get thousands of pounds a week, more money than you can spend once you've got the car and the house and whatever else you want to get. I just think that's going to be a massive issue. But hopefully we can keep my opinion is with mental health, addiction, everything is the more that we talk about it, the more that we get people on like Luke and talk about it and talk about different ideas of how to get things to improve or to change. Ultimately, that's the only way to go. If we kind of everyone just says, oh, it's tragic and then goes about their daily life again, then you don't really get anywhere. But that's just my opinion anyway. So Luke, what we like to do, like we're going to kind of go a bit more into you now. But I should have done this at the start really, but for people who are maybe not familiar with you and who you are, who you play for, etc., just in your own words, tell us a bit about you, your upbringing, your career. Where did it all begin for Luke Chadwick and how did you become who you are today?
Yeah, so start at the beginning as a little kid. First experience of football was just playing out in the garden with my brother, and my dad went on to play for a grassroots team as a 8-year-old in an under-9s team. And back in them days, you were straight onto a full-size football pitch for full-size goals, playing 11v11. As a kid, I was freakishly fast, so I used to be the striker. My teammates would kick the ball over the top of the defenders' heads, and I'd just chase after it and tap it in the goal. So I had a huge amount of success as a young player. I grew up in a tiny village in South Cambridge, so it's not exactly a hotbed for football talent, and I was sort of head and shoulders above everyone else. So that sort of early success gave me belief to carry on, and carried on scoring loads of goals as a kid, and got scouted to go up to Man United as a 14-year-old. Went up there, absolutely loved it, got signed as a schoolboy, which meant I'd just go up there at the weekend and spend a weekend there till I left school at 16, and then became a YTS. Obviously had a great time as a YTS player, ended up signing as a professional player went on loan to Royal Antwerp in Belgium, which was a fantastic experience, both on and off the pitch, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And then went back to Man United, where I started getting a few games in the first team. From then I went on to play for various other clubs. It was somewhat of a journeyman, which can sometimes be used in a negative term as a footballer, but I'm quite comfortable with that because I had a fantastic journey. There were obviously loads of ups and downs along the way, but it was I loved being a footballer. All I ever wanted to be as a kid was a footballer. So to achieve that and being a footballer for 17, 18 years is something I'm hugely proud of.
Yeah, 100%. You had an amazing career. And you mentioned the highs and the lows. And that's something that we have talked about with each guest is football is, 1 minute you're the hero, the next minute you're the villain. The feeling can go from one extreme to the other from week to week. How difficult did you find it, particularly in the kind of the early days of your career, to deal with those extreme highs and lows?
Yeah, I think obviously I went through a real tough time when I was at Man United, and I never knew how to deal with that. I was an extremely quiet, shy lad who naively had no idea what it was like being a professional footballer, particularly playing for the biggest club in the world. I was never comfortable or really wanted to be famous, as it were, but it sort of comes with a territory. And the experiences I went through at the club was sort of being mocked for my appearance. I had spots on my face, teeth that stuck out, and it was something that was made quite a big deal of on TV shows, in the media, etc. And it was something that made me feel awful inside, something that I had no idea to deal with, but was also so closed off in a bubble of football. All I knew was football, so I never told anyone about it and suffered in silence, as it were, as I went through that period of my life.
Do you remember the first time that, I know they think it's all over, obviously it was one of the shows which was sort of doing that sort of thing. Do you remember the first time that it happened and your initial reaction to it?
Yeah, the first time anything ever happened like that was when I was in Belgium and I was doing really well, and a Belgian newspaper done a really big article on me. Obviously, I went out and got it, couldn't read the language, but one thing just stuck out to me, and it was obviously about football, but it said denture a la Bugs Bunny. And I saw that, and it shouldn't, in my opinion, it shouldn't have made me feel as bad. I felt awful about it. I felt so ashamed and embarrassed about it. I wanted to go and buy all the copies of the paper so no one else would see it. And then going back to Manchester, I got a text on a Friday evening off a friend saying, nice appearance on They Think It's All Over. I weren't watching the show at the time, so quickly turned over. My heart sank because I thought it can't be a positive thing. But then I think one of the teams got a question right, and there was a big screen behind where at the table where they were set or whatever, and it showed me celebrating a goal. So I thought, had pure relief, because I thought, that must have been what they meant. But then a couple of minutes later, I think a picture of me come on the screen, and obviously they were mocking my appearance, the way I looked, and it was like a stomach turning moment where, again, the whole embarrassment of it all, the shame of it, and I was angry at myself because it was such a childish sort of schoolboy thing. I didn't know why it was making me feel so bad, and at the same time I'd never had any intention of telling anyone, because how could I say that this was making me unhappy, because I was a young kid living his dream, playing for the biggest football club in the world. So it was a challenging time, and again, I didn't really know myself enough, because from the age of 9, 10, whenever I started playing football, that was all that mattered to me. So I never really developed myself in any other areas. I didn't concentrate at school. I didn't have any sort of emotional intelligence to express myself, to explain how I was feeling. So it made it a real tough time during that period.
So would you say your reaction to that was to kind of bottle up all those feelings of kind of shame or embarrassment or whatever for the comments and the way that you were being basically bullied for, that's what it is, for your appearance? Did you bottled up all those feelings
Oh, completely all bottled up inside. I wouldn't mention it to anyone. If anyone said anything about me to me about it, I'd say it's fine. I'm not bothered, and just sort of get on with things. So it was obviously I didn't know myself well enough to be able to express myself, which obviously would have made the situation a hell of a lot easier and a hell of a lot better for me. But I wasn't capable of doing that at the time.
Yeah, I guess dealing with something at 30, say, and then dealing with something at 19, particularly if you've got a shy personality anyway, is very difficult. But Jacob, you're a mental health support worker.
It's
bottling
like
things up is like
Luke's story is, because I was. So how old are you, Luke?
Sorry?
How old are you?
I was 19.
No, how old are you now?
Oh, just coming up 40 next Wednesday.
So I think because I remember you were playing. So I'm 33. So I was in secondary school when you were playing for United. So I remember don't remember it on TV because I was probably a little bit, maybe 16, maybe a little bit too young. But I remember the stuff around that sort of time. And like now, when you look at it, like just hearing the story, it just makes you feel like, who was even like, how was this even happening? Like, how did this even, like, who thought, let's pick on this young little boy? Like, because, and like now, I think it's something when you came out to actually say, this did affect me. I think it woke up a lot of people to go, actually, it's a disgrace, really, that it happened for so long and that it was just okay that we could just bully this person. And I know, a lot of the pundits and stuff come out and apologise, but, a part of me thinks they should have done that at the time. And I think time is one of those things that we can look back at some things and go, oh, we really dealt really well with that. And other things, I think it's the ugly side of football. And I think when you were talking just then, I thought your emotional and mental health resilience in that situation is amazing, really, because other players or other people in that situation probably wouldn't have reacted as well as you did. And probably, there's some people that probably wouldn't be where you are now because, if you look at, Jessie from, what's it called, Little Mix, she was bullied on national TV, but it was more with social media about the way she looked when she was in X Factor and stuff like that. And then she's come out with a documentary about how that affected her with the eating disorder and her depression and stuff like that. And I think, we have, I suppose now social media is still doing that stuff that was happening on national TV, but it's just not open as much as it is, when yours was on national TV. And I think that's the problem. I think, you've talked about, Ian Wright receiving, the amount of racial abuse he gets online. And I think it happens still today. I'd love to say, football's changed and we're a different culture. We don't get away with that. It still happens today, but it's just hidden a little bit better. So we're not talking about it. So when Luke comes out and shares his story and it goes sort of viral, people go, oh, this is disgusting. This is the old football. And this is, it's not like it is now. We've changed and evolved. In some ways we have. I think we have.
It's on social media instead
it's just hidden away.
BBC One at primetime TV,
If you look at, it's still happening. If you watch some stand-up comics online posting stuff, it's just tricky. It's so tricky. And I think Luke is a real sort of champion for emotional and mental health resilience. Because where you are now, it's amazing. And I think as with your work, with your football academy and your work with that, I think as a parent, I'd be really proud that my son was going to your academy, because I think not just because you've achieved those levels, because I think, I'm never going to be a professional footballer, but I think to achieve what you did on the pitch is amazing. But I think it's overshadowed with what you've achieved off the pitch. And I think it shouldn't be underestimated what you've achieved for the amount of abuse you received to now be where you are. We can go, actually, I bottled it and it wasn't helpful for me. I suppose for me, it would be interesting to know what was it that, normally when people bottle stuff up, it leads to either it spilling out somewhere and then they're going, shit, I need some help, I need some support. So what was it for you that made you go, I need to look into this and get some help?
I think in terms of leaving, when I left Manchester United, I loved playing for Manchester United. I know the club so much, but it was a bit of a relief as well, because I weren't comfortable being under the spotlight. I didn't really want to be famous, and just sort of growing up and becoming more confident in myself and not knowing that I could deal with this situation. And obviously the abuse went away in terms of I weren't at Man United anymore, so no one was that bothered what I was doing, as it were. So time's a great healer, isn't it? And I think over the years and learning about myself, I was able to deal with it in a constructive way. Probably didn't talk about it a huge amount of the time, but that's what I'd say was the issue that I had, that I couldn't talk about it. But now, obviously it was 20 odd years ago, so I'm more than happy to talk about it now. But I think time just healed the wounds and just sort of got over what I went through, and just obviously had my whole life ahead of me. And although it weren't a club of the prestige of Manchester United, I just loved being a professional footballer and had so much gratitude, because that was all I wanted to do. And now I didn't have to deal with the press on any sort of level, really, or be on the telly, because all I was a footballer, and all I ever really craved was a quiet life to do what I always dreamed of doing.
Because because I've watched one of the interviews I think you did for ITV, and I remember I watched it this afternoon, and the interviewer is not very. He's just trying to get a story. You can tell that because he keeps pushing you for something that's clickbait, I think. But I think you can tell from he's asking the questions about when you brought out the sort of when you said, "Oh, these are some of my experiences." I think you genuinely didn't think it would go as crazy as it went and viral. And I think you can see from your humbleness that it was a massive surprise. And you actually, in the interview, you could see you're quite uncomfortable with how far, you wanted to say your story, but not that it go as big as it did.
Yeah, to be honest, I never had any idea it'd go as big as it did. And I think the message maybe got lost a little bit, where in terms of it was purely a positive message in terms of it's a tricky time. Everyone's mental health is going to be fluctuating. We're in this period of lockdown where no one really knows what's going on. And it was just a message saying the best way of dealing with that sort of thing when you're feeling low is to talk about it, something that I didn't do when I was going through a tough time at Manchester United. And I think it sort of got turned into a blame game with the people that were on the show. And obviously it upset me at the time, but I'd never hated them or anything like that. I was just desperate for it to stop. So in terms of the way the story was spun and Nick Hancock on the telly apologising made me feel a little bit uncomfortable, because I weren't asking for that. Obviously it's nice that he'd done it, but I didn't make any odds to me whether they apologised or not, because I was over that situation, as it were. I've forgiven for whatever they said about me. It doesn't matter if they apologised or not. It just took away from the positive message that I was trying to spread. And again, as I spoke about when I was a kid, probably naively, I didn't even think about that when I posted the tweet many months ago.
What positives came from it?
The best thing that came from it, I've received a fair few messages from people just saying it's helped me, and the feeling that gave me was incredible. To think that, don't get me wrong, I know I'm not a big superstar who everyone's going to listen to, but to have got them messages from people saying, thanks for saying what you did, I went through this and this has given me the confidence to talk about it, and to like the humility that I feel, I'm so humbled to have received them messages. It was an incredible feeling to receive that, something I weren't expecting at all, really.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's the positives which come from it when you did, do the tweet and then you did some interviews and stuff. There's if you can reach that one person, we've talked about that a lot on this show, is that if you can reach that one person who is maybe bottling some things up or is struggling with gambling or drinking or whatever subject we might have talked about over the various shows, if you can reach that one person who maybe is keeping things to themselves and they just open up to a friend or a family member or someone, that's the aim at the end of the day, is trying to spread that positive message. And yeah, I guess the other thing as well is like in your situation where you bottled it up, and then it seems like over the years you kind of came to terms with it a bit, and because it quietened down a bit as well, you were able to kind of get your head around it and deal with it yourself. Whereas if, say, for instance, you'd stayed at Manchester United and it had carried on, it could have become more of a problem. Or if, a different person maybe would have dealt with that bottling it up very, differently, it could have spilled out, like Jacob mentioned, whether it be like anger on the pitch or off the pitch, or, upset or drinking, whatever it may be. Bottling up emotions can lead to that, I would imagine. Well, I know from personal experience, but obviously bottling up feelings can lead to further issues with mental health. So I don't know. It's not really a question in there, I guess. It's just luckily in your situation, you were able to, you dealt with it over the years and are able then to promote a positive message now. But another person, maybe it could have gone very wrong and caused further issues.
Yeah, I think like throughout that period, I always loved myself. So I think in them early days, I didn't know why I loved myself because I didn't learn about it. But in my sort of opinion, I thought I looked quite normal. I didn't really understand it. Obviously, the other people felt differently, but there was never sort of looking in the mirror in disgust or self-loathing or anything like that. So I think it helped me that I loved myself throughout. It didn't affect how I felt towards myself. It was just like desperate for it to all come to an end, really.
Yeah, and I guess like when I spoke to you towards the end of the Andy Campbell show, and we kind of briefly touched on it, and you said then like you didn't really want an apology from the guys. It was the positivity or your message got lost in it. And I think, Jacob, you are right, mate, that you don't see that sort of thing on TV as much these days. Like you might get the odd comedian, like stand-up comedian, maybe, who will target like celebrities or footballers. But generally, I think they've moved away from that kind of bullying kind of content. And with stand-up comedy, I'm in a bit of a weird boat because I do enjoy like quite edgy stand-up comedians and stuff like that. But I think where there's like a line is where you're criticizing people for something they can't help, or their appearance or things like that. I think that's where it goes away from kind of, being like edgy comedy to just edging on the side of bullying, I guess. And I know some people will say, well, you should be able to joke about everything, but it's not, is it? Because you can't joke about everything because, in Luke's case, it was causing him a tremendous amount of upset. And like I just mentioned, it could have led to other stuff. And, thankfully it didn't.
Luke, was anything ever said like with the players at United? Like, did they ever say to you, "Oh, what do you think to that?" or make like jokes at it?
No, there was never. To be honest, there was never. Maybe a couple of the younger lads might have had a laugh about it to me, and I probably would have laughed along with them. I think the more experienced players didn't really like joke about it or anything like that. I know a few of them said, "Don't worry about all that rubbish and stuff like that." And I didn't know what I was coming into. To be honest, I didn't know if this is just it. This is what being a footballer is, because obviously I'm playing with big stars who would get abused getting off the bus at every away game we used to go to as well. So it was just a case of you're going to have to deal with this, Luke. And because of, like I mentioned, I was never had any intention of telling anyone about how I was feeling. It was just a case of batten down the hatches and sort of get through it the best way you can.
Did you ever get? Oh, sorry, sir. Did you ever get to any moments where it was really bad, where you were thinking, I can't carry on with this?
It affected me the most away from football. Football was always my release, something I always loved doing. But like I was obsessed with every time I'd go anywhere, people were looking at me and laughing. So I'd rarely go out the flat. I wouldn't want to socialise. I wouldn't want to go out anywhere. So it was purely a case of going to football, then coming home. And don't get me wrong, I know now I probably could have gone anywhere and I might have got the odd comment, but in my head it was every single person was in on the joke apart from me, and everyone was laughing about the way that I looked.
That must have created a tremendous amount of pressure though on you, like mentally, if you're starting to think about like, your life outside football, going out and things like this. That's got to, particularly for someone so young, it's got to weigh on your mind a lot. Was there someone who at the time, if say, like I know you said you kind of dealt with it gradually and got your head around it, was there someone at United or around you at that time who you could have spoken to about it and said, like, it's getting to me, or it's really becoming a problem?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. I think the club would have supported me any way they can. I think I didn't speak to my family or anyone about it. So I obviously had a support network around me that would have helped me. But because I was so embarrassed and ashamed about it and thought it was something wrong with me because it was making me feel so bad, there was no way in the world that I would ever have broached the subject and spoke about it.
Yes.
Have you spoken to your family about it since? Because as a parent, like, it must be like, because you've got kids, haven't you?
Yeah.
So as a parent now, do if imagine it happening to your kid, it would be heartbreaking to think, oh God, like, have you ever spoken to your parents since to say how did they sort of react to it?
I've not gone into detail about how they were feeling about. Obviously, I understand now that it'd be heartbreaking, but in my mind, if they ever asked me about it, I would have said that I was fine, because I'd rather, in my mind, if I said I was fine, that would make them feel fine, if you know what I mean. So that was the only sort of thoughts that I had back then. Obviously now as an older man and understanding a little bit better, I can imagine it was it'd be heartbreaking for anyone to hear their child spoke about like that.
Oh God, yeah. Look, bit of an interesting kind of question or twist on it, but I was wondering, what would you? So, say if you had a time machine and you could go back and speak to yourself and advise yourself now, like how to deal with it back then, what advice would you give yourself with dealing with it? Would you have dealt with it the same way, knowing what you know now, or would you have reached out to someone?
To be honest, I've been asked this question a lot. And if I went back now and said to Luke 20 years ago and gave him some advice, that person wouldn't have taken the advice because how that person was. So I don't think it would have made any difference. I don't like regrets. So I like to think everything happened for a reason. Nothing happened as a mistake. And that was part of my journey that I've gone through, and hopefully has made me a better person having dealt with that situation. So it's a good question, Si, but it's a tough one to answer.
And I'm a big believer.
I get him sometimes.
I'm a big believer, similar to what you said, Luke, on the power of lived experience. And I think the Luke Chadwick that's here today would not be here today if it wasn't for the young Luke Chadwick who went through all that diversity and all those struggles. And I think I say this to people, if it isn't our struggles in life turn us into the people we are today. And I think if of all the struggles I've had in my life with, if that's family members or my own personal stuff, I just wouldn't be the person that I am today that's passionate and creative or really care about other people. I think we have to go through those difficult moments. So I always say to people that when they are struggling, and say, this is a journey, and, you might be at that stage where you're struggling at this moment, but in a year's time or 2 years' time, you can look back at that old you and go, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have built that resilience to be where I am now.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that, Jacob. Your battles and the negative things which happen over your life, they contribute to you as you evolve as a person and through life. I say that as I turned 39 today. This 39 years of very up and down stuff, and that's how you learn, I guess, is by negativity or bad things that happen, good things that happen. I do think that you learn more from mistakes or negative things that happen, but that's just me and my negative mind, probably. Look, Luke, thank you so much for joining us, and I appreciate you, you speaking about all this again, because I know you've been through it quite a few times over the last few months. But I do appreciate your time and your honesty. And as me and Jacob have been saying, for the first 5-6 shows of this series, we just want to try and reach those people who might be struggling with various issues, whether it could be bullying, it could be addiction, it could be PTSD. We've talked about many different subjects along the way. And most importantly, I'd say, as a good friend of mine says, keep on keeping on. And we'll drop the links on our social media to the mental health pages, Mind Mental Health Charity, and a few others in the description. Jacob, as ever, thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. No, I loved it. Luke, I was just quickly, so with your football school, where is that run? Is that local to you?
So at the moment, we're based in the southeast East Anglia region, but we're hoping to grow our network further in the coming year.
And if I'm a parent in that area, how do I get involved?
So it's all over Facebook. If you go on the Football Fun Factory, have a look at that, and that'll keep you informed of all the areas that we're sort of going to be growing in the near future. And drop me a text, get me number off site, and I'll sort you out anyway.
Oh, brilliant! And yeah, I've been looking on Instagram, seeing some of the stuff you're doing. So I'd definitely recommend any parents got kids into football get down there, because they look like doing some good stuff.
Yeah, I'll put the links to the Football Factory stuff as well in the description for the episode. So we'll be back with another episode next week, 8 o'clock, exclusively. Ace Podcast Nation presents Mental Health in Sport, series number 2. We've got some good guests coming up. We've been so lucky with this series. Had some really big names like Luke, Keith Gillespie, David Cottrell, our very own Andy Campbell as well. And I'm hoping, and we had the current Walsall captain, James Clark as well, his show was really well received. They've all been really well received, and hopefully we can keep talking about mental health, keep spreading the word, and we got some more guests lined up, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that we might be able to get someone from the PFA on as well. It's been discussed, no confirmation yet, but we'll see. Fingers crossed. In the meantime, subscribe to the YouTube channel, drop a video a like or whatever, and give it a share. But we'll be back next week. Don't forget to check out the Andy Campbell Football Show on Mondays, live 7:30 as well. Cheers.